couple of weeks ago we went on holiday. Now before we went we decided to give our beehives a check, and at that point we had 2 hives, and what we wanted to do was check for queen cells. Now we checked one of the hives and no queen cells at all, but it was producing lots of honey, and it is a very strong colony, so we were quite happy with that. And then we looked at the hive that was a merger of 2 hives. We merged 2 hives together at the end of March. Now, 2 months on from there, how was it doing? Well, in both brood boxes we found queen cells, but we couldn't find any queen. And what we thought was perhaps the bees had swarmed, taking the old queen with her, leaving the queen cells behind. Now, we weren't entirely sure whether that was the case, and I think in retrospect we were completely wrong about that. But anyway, what we did was we split that hive. One brood box went off to be a new hive, and what would then happen is that the worker bees, the bees that did the flying around collecting the honey, collecting the nectar rather, they would leave that hive, go off for a day's work, and then go back to the original site of the hive, leaving this newly created hive as quite a weak one, but it would have queen cells and nursery bees in it, and eventually those nursery bees would grow into being worker bees. So we did that at the start of the holiday, went away, came back 10 days later, and there were 3 swarms near the hives. So we then had to capture them, and we therefore created another 3 hives. Now what I didn't expect was for a 4th swarm to come along, and that's only just happened in the last hour. And I was weeding right where the camera is now. I was weeding away, and I looked up, and around over my head was this enormous cloud of bees, and they've all settled over there on the hedge, and our next job is to try and capture them and make hive number 7. Well, yesterday we was telling you about how the hives had swarmed again, and we found a swarm on our hedge. Well, after that we discovered another swarm, an even bigger one, on the neighbour's hedge, and so I've come here this morning. It's a little past 6 in the morning, and we've come to capture both swarms, but we're going to start with this bigger one on my neighbour's hedge. Well, we've started by putting a sheet on the ground below where the swarm is, and this helps us to capture any loose bees that don't fall into the bucket I'm about to use to capture the rest of the swarm. Right, this has been slightly messy because there were so many branches on the hedge, so I couldn't knock them all off in one go. So what we've done is I've captured as much of the bees as possible in the bucket, and then I've overturned it on the sheet, slightly propped it open with a stick. Now if the queen is in the bucket, the other bees will go in and join her, but we've just got to leave this for a couple of hours at least to make sure that all the bees have got into the bucket. If they haven't, if the queen is outside the bucket, then the swarm will reform, probably be back at the same spot where they'd formed earlier. It's now about 12 hours since I was here this morning. The bees are in the bucket, but also around it as well. It turns out that this is a much bigger swarm than we expected, so what we're going to have to do is try and pick up that whole lot of them and get them into this hive here.
A load of leaves in it. Why doesn't that one?
Down here is a second swarm that I captured this morning, and we'll show you in a moment. It's on a sheet under a bucket, and this one we managed to get the whole of the swarm actually under the bucket, unlike that previous one, which was a lot bigger swarm. So what we're going to do now is wrap the cloth around that bucket, drop it into a bigger bucket, and then take it down to a spare hive we have a couple of miles down the road. Well, this is the hive that we put together about 2 hours ago. This was the big swarm, and a lot of them were still flying around when we put them into the hive. But because we got the queen into the hive with the main swarm, then all the other bees in that swarm flew into the hive. This isn't going to stay here because it's on our neighbour's allotment. We're going to ship this a couple of miles down the road to a friend's garden, and we're going to put a ratchet cable around, a ratchet strap around the hive so that we can ship it down in the car. And you can see on the front there we've also blocked up the entrance with foam. We're at the new site for the 3 hives that have been created in the last few days. Because we have had so many swarms, we've actually exhausted all our equipment, so we've had to make a bit of a makeshift hive from a super and some super frames and a floor, an old floor and a stand that we had. But what we're going to do now is add these to the hive. and once we've got all the bees in, we'll then put the remaining frames in and close up the hive. Well, that's the ratchet cable coming off the hive. It's still blocked up. That is the improvised hive. Small swarm in there, so we're not sure whether that will work as a whether that will grow into a full colony, so we may end up adding that one to another one, but we'll give it a week before doing so. And then this one here we brought down a few days ago, and it is well established and doing very well. It's now nearly 10 o'clock at night, so they're obviously all gone to bed, being very quiet. But this is our new additional apiary as a result of a large amount of swarming in the past week. Just as we thought we'd seen the last of the swarms, another one arrives. It's just over to the right of me on one of my artichoke plants, which has collapsed under the weight of it. Now, we don't know which hive it's come from. All the hives are very active at the moment, but it looks as though that swarm will now be used to make up hive number 8. And if you think about the start of this month, start of June, we had 2 hives. Now we're about to reach number 8.